Hello there, everybody, and today I'm here to talk about another Amazon show that's animated. Last time we did Batman Cape Crusader. Now I'm doing Invincible Season 1. So, I finally rewatched Season 1 because that was the only season I got to watch on Freevee. But I got Amazon Prime, so I was able to finish the entire show. And I gotta say, this is easily one of my favorite superhero shows of all time. I don't know anything about the character at first. I knew he had a comic book series that was outside of DC and Marvel. But it is super sweet that we have this show because there's so much lore, characters that you can't help but just love and get invested into what goes on. And this is easily the most violent superhero show I've ever seen. Now I know The Boys is super violent, but this show is on a whole new level of violence. And it has an amazing cast, so let's talk about it. So season 1 is really good because this is more of like a coming of age story for Invincible, who is Mark Grayson, played by Steven Yeun, I think his name is. He's really good in this show. He's got that innocence in his voice. He wants to be a good person and be the superhero he wants to be, but because of the challenges that he faces, that it collides with his superhero in real life. But the main thing about this show that really worked for people was J.K. Simmons as Omni-Man. So Omni-Man is basically an evil Superman, but I'll get the plot twist later. He's basically evil Superman with a mustache. And I just love how Superman can be a great example of being a superhero with so many amazing powers, and he shows how good he is, how he can be a much better person than the other evil Supermen out there, or copies of Superman. But you can almost think Omni-Man is a copy of Superman, but honestly his origin is way different from what we usually see in the lore of, if you know what I mean. But mainly what goes on in this show is just a lot of superhero drama. Mark starts to get his powers when he's 17 and he starts to learn, but Omni-Man is not really keen on him having his powers. But the mom, who I think she's played by Sandra Yu, I think her name is. I sorry if I said her name wrong, but she is doing her best to be the best mother she can be to Mark. But the main thing that happens in this show that becomes a whole mystery towards the characters, except the audience, is Omni-Man is evil. Because literally, the first episode is probably the least violent until the very end, where literally we see a Justice League team. We see a Wonder Woman, a Flash, a sort of Martian Manhunter character. We also see Immortal, who is basically immortal. But they're all brought to a small room, and they're all brutally slaughtered by Omni-Man. Just the way he kills them is just very hard to watch. But I don't know if I can really talk about the graphic details in this show, since YouTube's very keen on graphic content. But I did my best to find the least graphic photos. But that was mainly the first episode, where it's just Mark trying to learn his powers and stuff. But episode 2 is where we meet the other superhero team. This is where we meet Adam Eve. I think Adam Eve, my bad. She's played by Gilligan Jacobs. She's really good in this show. She looks very pretty. I don't know what her design reminds me of. I get some DCAU vibes from this animation. I bet it was inspired to do this show. Like, Invincible took inspiration, was what I'm trying to say. But she mainly is like the leader of the superhero team, which are revealed to be like Rex, Monster Girl, I think her name is, Robot, and a few others. But those characters are really interesting. I like their team dynamic. But the main thing that happens with Eve in this show is that she ends up dating Rex for a bit, but it's actually revealed that he's having an affair with Eve by dating and making out with a girl named Duplicate Girl, and this disappoints Eve. But she almost has feelings for Mark, but it turns out he's dating a girl from his high school, Amber, who I think is played by the girl from Deadpool 2 who played Domino, which I thought was cool. But their relationship doesn't really go well, as Mark has to keep flaking on her because of his superhero life. But he's doing his best to keep it all balanced up, but it just isn't working out. But there's an entire episode where they go to college, which I'll maybe get into a bit. But I think like the main thing that goes on throughout these episodes is Omni-Man is getting investigated by Cecil, who is played by Walter Goggins, who is basically this guy with a scar who is willing to do bad things to stop the bad guys in this show. But he sends like a Hellboy looking detective guy who is played by Clancy Brown to investigate. But after he takes it a little too far, he banishes him from investigating Omni-Man. But I think the main thing that happens in this show is Debbie ends up figuring out that Omni-Man was the one who was responsible for killing the Guardians of the Globe. But the main thing that goes on for Invincible is like he ends up going to the moon, I'm pretty sure, and meeting this troll looking dude I thought was funny. I don't know if he's played by Seth Rogen, I'm pretty sure. But the main thing that happens is like Invincible goes to Mars to save some astronauts, and we get some lore with the space era. But probably one of my favorite episodes of the show is where things get really intense, is where they go to the college campus, where I think like Mark teams up with his best friend William, and Amber and Eve. They all go to the college campus, but it's actually revealed that someone's getting kidnapped. Various college students are getting kidnapped by this college professor dude who is revealed to be some Dollatron maker who turns his victims into like giant murder machines, and he ends up kidnapping William's lover, and he ends up getting almost turned until he's able to break free after William gets captured, and Invincible ends up saving him at the last minute. But because Mark was gone for so long, it leads Amber to just not like Mark anymore. She just does not want to date him at all. She feels that he is just not being a good boyfriend. But even earlier in the episodes, Eve tries to tell Amber that he does care, but it just doesn't work out. I forgot to mention the 5th episode is where the superheroes are encountered by some giant tiger-looking dude who ends up almost killing Invincible and all his teammates, and it's just insane. That episode was really intense and bloody, but Mark gets saved at the last second in that episode. But I think the best episodes are episodes 7 and 8, is where Omni-Man is revealed to be the monster behind all the killings of the Guardians of the Globe. But Cecil ends up trying to take out Omni-Man, and it just it goes horribly wrong. He even has to use like a giant satellite to take out Omni-Man, but of course it only gives him a nosebleed, so he sends him a monster to take out Omni-Man. But Invincible ended up catching up to his dad after he tried to work things out with Amber. He even reveals his identity to her, but because she already suspected it, she just doesn't care about dating Mark anymore. And so he basically flakes on his best friend after they have an argument over Amber. He ends up going to Eve, who is wanting to have a life for herself because she wants to do more than just be a superhero. She ends up leaving her parents' home because they're so controlling. But she ends up living in the woods and building a tree house, which looks super cool. But once Invincible sees what's going on with Omni-Man, it goes wild. Where Omni-Man literally destroys the Beast. He was even attacked by Cecil, a hologram version of him. But once we get to episode 8, that's where things get really intense. It even ends, episode 7 literally ends with Omni-Man saying, "Mark, we need to talk." But episode 8 is just full on fighting. Just Invincible versus Omni-Man. Omni-Man ends up revealing his origin. He is an alien from a planet called Viltrum, but apparently it was a so powerful empire that they basically had a hard time controlling it. But apparently what Omni-Man is trying to do, he's trying to have the Viltrumites come to Earth, take over, and act like they're gonna save the people of Earth. But Omni-Man feels that the Earth people have useless lives because he thinks their species are superior. And it leaves Invincible fighting Omni-Man because he calls Debbie a pet. But everything they tried to do to take out Omni-Man was crazy. They even Cecil's assistant, I forgot to mention, Donald, ends up sacrificing himself to stop Omni-Man. But it just isn't enough. Even Invincible wasn't enough. And this is where things get really intense, where Invincible ends up getting thrown across the Earth to Chicago. And he ends up, because of being thrown, it ends up killing everybody in Chicago. And it's super, super bad. And even Omni-Man throws Invincible near a subway to basically just murder all the people in the subway. It's just super bloody. If this show was live action, I know Needle Mouse Productions said this in his Invincible videos, but if this show was live action, it'd probably be the most violent TV show ever made. This might even be the most violent animated show ever made. I don't know what is the most violent. You can comment it below. But Omni-Man ends up basically destroying Invincible by just beating him to death, smashing his face, but he's able to stop. Once he has a flashback of when Mark was a little kid, just playing baseball with his baseball team, and Debbie giving him encouragement to cheer on Mark, and the two end up cheering him on, and it causes Omni-Man to cry and flee. And he even says, "Think, Mark, think." That is the infamous meme from this show. But Mark is saved by Cecil after being laid there for a while. He ends up healing up after a while. Debbie is devastated what Omni-Man has done. But even Amber goes back to Mark after realizing what has happened. And he ends up meeting up with Eve and others. And Mark has decided he's going to continue the superhero lifestyle, even after he felt he failed. But it looks like Amber and Invincible are still going to be boyfriend-girlfriend, I'm pretty sure. I forgot to mention, also we had this little arc with Robot, who wants to be human, and he ends up using Rex's DNA to turn himself human to help out Monster Girl, which I thought was a wild storyline. But I think I mentioned everything that goes on in this show. But that's Invincible Season 1. It has amazing action, fun, interesting characters, definitely different from the usual. It has the cliche superhero tropes, but they try to do it in a unique way. That's what really works about this show. So I'd give this season a 10 out of 10. I don't know when I'm going to review seasons 2 and 3. I'll probably get to it soon. But anyway, Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.